Welcome to the Your Life Unchained podcast. We're here today with our special guest, Jeannette Linfoot. Welcome, Jeannette.
Thank you, Rick. It's fabulous to be here.
And I am super excited to have you here. You have accomplished so many things in your life, and I really just am excited to talk through some of those accomplishments and really learn from you and learn from your experiences so that our listeners can hopefully use that in their own lives.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I'm an open book, Rick, so I'm very happy to talk about my life, the ups, the downs, the wins, the failures, you name it. I'm very, very happy to do that. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, thank you. So let's start out with a simple question. When did you decide that you really wanted to be successful? You know, like a lot of people when they're kids, they want to be whatever is in the moment or seems glamorous. Like I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be a ballet dancer or something. But you're in the business space. What led you to want to be in the business space?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, Rick, because when you look back on your life, there are definitely inflection points, I think. And I guess for me, you know, I grew up in a place called Manchester in the northwest of the UK. And, you know, I came from a very normal working class family. I was the youngest of three daughters. And I had a great childhood. I really did. We didn't necessarily have a lot of money, but we had a lot of love and happiness. And my parents, you know, we didn't want for anything either, you know, just a normal family. But I guess I always knew deep down inside that I was a bit of a black sheep of the family. And I would probably say that realization was probably around about the age of 15, something like that. So, you know, I was pretty good academically, actually, you know, so I was a bit of a girly swot, if that translates. So I was a bit of a teacher's pet. So there was never any issues with that. But I guess that, you know, that drive to want to do well, and I guess gain approval, probably being the baby of the family, always wanting the attention and the adoration, you know, look at me, I'm doing well kind of thing. But I think that drive at that young age to do quite well at school really set me on a path, because I knew that I wanted to go to university. I was the only one in my family to go. And I had a love for economics, which isn't necessarily an obvious choice for a 14, 15-year-old girl to say, I really love economics. But yeah, I had a great teacher, Mr. Watkins. And I think, you know, that set me on a certain path, really, because I then subsequently went to university and did an economics degree, which, you know, I did well. I got first. So I was very pleased with that. And of course, with a topic like that, it's quite broad, you know, so you can apply it to business. And that set me down the path, really, Rick. So I think that early phase of sort of 14, 15-year-old, I knew that there was more to life than just staying in Manchester. I knew that I wanted to explore the world and see what was out there. And because I had this sort of desire to learn quite early on, that kind of set me on that path relatively early, really, I think.
So what was it about economics that stood out to you or captured your interest, I guess, early on?
Yeah, I think I like the logic of it, you know, and the sort of I like the sort of the numbers side of it as well. I was always quite numeric and quite commercial. And of course, I had a great teacher. So I think sometimes it can just be who you are around at the time, you know, that actually just sort of lights a spark. And the way that he taught just brought it to life for me. And I kind of thought, well, I'm quite a logical person, that I thought, well, you know, this can apply to so many different avenues. I don't quite know what I want to do in life yet, but I know it's probably business related. And I think if I do economics, it probably gives me options, even though I don't know the straight path that will take. So combination of those factors. And my first job, not my first job, my first proper job was actually as a government economist in Whitehall, in London. Yeah, I know. But, you know, I was there for a couple of years, and I was working on pensions of all things. advising government ministers on pensions policy. And so it all sounds a bit dull, really, but it was a great first job. And what it did, it meant that I moved to London from the north of England. But I pretty much knew that the grey cardigans and the suits of the civil service, wasn't quite my personality. So I jumped out into the travel industry then, where I then spent most of my kind of corporate life, if you like, for the next, 25 years after that. So it was an interesting journey that I went on in that early stage. Yeah, for sure.
All right. So you were wearing the gray suits and going to that 9 to 5, punch in, punch out government job. Mm. What was it about the travel industry that attracted you? Was it a particular position, or was it the travel itself, or what aspect of it?
Yeah, a combination, really. I think, I was always really lucky because my parents actually always made sure we had a family holiday, abroad, which not everyone did, actually. Not everyone did. So whilst, as I say, I came from a very working class family, mum and dad always saved up every year. So we had a family holiday, normally to somewhere like Spain, Benidorm or Mallorca. So I guess I was quite used to traveling from a young age, and I had this natural curiosity about the world and different cultures. So, there was that element of it that from a personal point of view, I love to travel. But then, I think I also was quite stubborn because when I was at university, I'd applied for a graduate scheme with a travel company called Thomson Holidays. And I got rejected, right? I didn't get in at all. And then a few years later, bear in mind, I was already working full time as a government economist. I saw an advert for Thomson Holidays for a graduate scheme. And maybe I'm just so determined and stubborn. I thought, I'm going to apply again. So I did apply again, and I got the job. So it was not the normal way, because most people leave university and then they'll go on a graduate scheme and then that'll turn into a full-time job. I had a full-time job, but I actually then sort of almost took a step back, if you like, and started in the travel industry on the graduate scheme. So it's a combination of a love for travel and just being stubborn and pissed off that I'd been rejected the first time. And then when I got into it, it's a great industry. It's a very tough industry, actually, for people that don't understand the industry. They just think it's all about lovely holidays. But it's a very, very hard-nosed trading environment. The margins are very thin. And of course, you're prone to all sorts of global shocks, currency fluctuations, Gulf wars, ash clouds, COVID that we're dealing with at the moment, so it's a very, very difficult industry to be in, despite the outside image of it just being all lovely holidays and nice destinations. Behind that, the business side of it is really challenging, but fabulous, really fabulous. Yeah, a lot of fun as well.
Well, and a lot of businesses are built strongly on relationships, but I would think the travel industry is one of those that you really have to have a strong relationship, or else people are just going to jump to the next cheapest option.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, from a customer point of view, customers have choice, don't they? Who they actually spend their hard-earned dollars with. So that's one side of it. But also, I would say as an industry, it's a people business. Holidays, it's the most special time of year for people. So the relationships with hoteliers, with your airline partners, you've got very often people who are on the phone speaking to customers, or in a travel agents, or on the ground in the destination, serving the guests. So it's very much around service and people. So those relationships are critical. And yeah, I think if you tend to find quite flamboyant personalities in the travel industry, because the lines as well are very blurred between your personal life and your work life. It's not a 9 to 5, right. You're away from home a lot. You have to make a lot of personal sacrifices, but my God, it's great fun as well. It's but you're right. Relationships are everything in any business, but in particular in the businesses that I've been in and led. Yeah.
And you brought up some good points, some things that we don't often think about when not being in that industry. Ash clouds you mentioned. That's something that I never even thought about. It never crossed my mind, but yeah, it absolutely does. All of these things that happen in all these potential destinations, or in between here and the potential destinations, can heavily impact the experience, or whether or not it's even possible. Like COVID, for example, that's shut down everything. So if you can't go, then there's no travel when there's no travel, right?
No, exactly. And and travel accounts for 10% of GDP globally. It's massive sector. It's really big in terms of the economic impact. And of course, if you're in a destination, you're creating jobs, you're creating, income and economic freedom for a lot of people. And of course, there's a sustainability angle as well. We have to protect the planet and act responsibly at the same time. But freedom of movement around the world is such a joy, and it brings so much pleasure to people that when it's taken away, you really notice it, like we have done more recently. So it's a fascinating industry, but it is quite tough actually. And I learned a lot during my time there, and I worked my way up from the bottom right to becoming the CEO. So it was a great journey I was on. It's in an industry that I still love, and I still have a foot in that door because I still work a lot with travel businesses and do advisory work. So it's great. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and when something like COVID happens, it's kind of like the global version of being grounded by your parents, right?
Absolutely. I've never thought of it that way, but that's a great description, Rick.
So what are some of the challenges that you came across as you were kind of climbing that corporate ladder?
Gosh, loads, actually. Loads, I have to say. I think for me, sometimes as a woman in business, it was quite tough. Not that I ever carried that around as an issue, because I always think if you walk into a room and think there's going to be a problem, there probably will be, but very much through my career, there were lots of times when I was the only woman in the boardroom, with a profit and loss account, and I was running, big businesses. So I would definitely say sometimes dealing with some of the more macho aspects of the leadership team in the boardroom sometimes could be quite tricky. But yeah, and then also, I had times when, I maybe gone for a promotion and hadn't got it and had to deal with the disappointment of that and kind of really reassess things and think, oh, well, what's my next move? But, I just think that if you have an appetite to grow and to learn, then when things come along that blow you off track, you're much more able to kind of deal with them. And some of that comes with maturity as well. And I think when you're younger in your career, I know for myself that sometimes you get really worried about the relatively small things. And it's important to not sweat the small stuff. That would definitely be a piece of advice I would give to anyone out there. Think about what the real priorities are and put your energy and focus into that, rather than maybe sometimes becoming too emotional about certain things, and actually try to have a sense of proportionality about stuff, I would say. But yeah, listen, I had loads of successes, loads of failures along the way. I built big international teams. So I remember one time when one of my bosses said to me, I was at TUI at the time, which is a very large global travel business, and I was running the product department in a big functional role. And then I got tapped on the shoulder, and TUI had decided to go into Russia, and they said to me, "Hey, Jeannette, how do you fancy going to Russia to buy 3 businesses and rebrand them?" Launched them to the Russian and the Ukrainian market as TUI. So, what about it? So I thought, oh my, what a thing. It wasn't a natural career move for me. And I remember thinking at the time, oh my God, can I do this? Oh my, little old me, Jeannette from Manchester. And I've got to go, I'm going to Moscow where I don't speak the language. I don't know the culture. I've never bought a business. I've ran businesses, but I've never bought a business in my life. Oh my God, where do I start? And so yeah, I remember thinking, oh God, oh my God, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. And then sort of having to really take a step back and think, well, hang on a minute, just give it a go. How bad can it be? Hopefully no one's going to die here. And if I make a mess of it, well, at least I'll have tried and I'll have learned something, So off I went to Russia for a couple of years. And then after that, I ended up in China and Brazil and India and all sorts of places, buying businesses and running businesses internationally. So there were lots of lessons along the way, Rick. But I think that self-belief, not sweating the small stuff, and really having the confidence to put yourself in the way of opportunity, because you never know where that might lead, and just give it a go. I think those are some of the themes through my career for sure.
So looking back at that first time in college when you went for that travel, what was it? The graduate scheme at Thompson. Yes, the graduate scheme. The first time you got turned down.
Yeah.
How do you think that experience, that first time getting turned down, how do you think that experience impacted your life going forward from that point?
Well, I think it was massive, actually, because had I not been turned down, and obviously you're disappointed at the time, aren't you, when you don't get anything? I mean, when I graduated in 1993, I'm showing my age now, there was a recession, and I remember coming out of university and I was applying with a first in economics. So I had a decent degree and I was applying for hundreds of jobs, not hundreds, literally, and they were just not getting anywhere. I mean, I was wiping tables in a suit, in one of the stores, one of the big department stores. I was working in a chip shop. I was waiting tables. I was working in a bar, doing whatever I needed to do to survive. Mm-hmm. But the thing was, when I was applying for those roles and I got rejected from that role, another rejection after all the others, I think what it did, it just made me more determined. So when I then saw that advertise it sort of 2 years later, or maybe it was even a bit longer, 2.5 years later, I just thought, I'm going to bloody try and get it. And actually, if I'd not done that, maybe I would never have had the career in the travel industry at all. I would have gone on and done something else. And so actually, sometimes I don't necessarily believe that things happen for a reason, but I think you have a choice how to respond to things, and that can often then set you in a direction that becomes incredibly fulfilling. So I feel really lucky for having had that rejection, because it meant I had a great career in the travel industry.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I often talk about the difference between responding and reacting to something. Because reacting, you could have just gone off and said, forget this. I'm not going to mess with this anymore. They turned me down. But instead you responded and you became more determined and said, you know what, I'm going to make this happen, whatever it takes. Yeah.
And actually, I think hard work as well. You've got to be prepared to work your ass off, haven't you, as well?
Yeah.
Because it's like anything. It doesn't really matter what you do, but as long as you're putting the effort in, and not everything will go right. Of course, you're going to get loads of things wrong, and that's fine, but you just have to keep going. I think there's a piece around you only ever really fail if you give up, and that's not to say that in business you should carry on with a business that is maybe not going somewhere, and there comes a point where you have to say actually move on, close it down or do whatever. But I think then you just move on to the next thing. So as long as you're moving forward and continually taking action, you will be successful. But it's not always easy. You just have to have that strength of spirit and just, one step a day. That's all you need to do. It's all progress, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I really think that the difference between success and failure is whether or not you get up after the last failure, right? Because failure is always a part of success. Would you agree?
100%. And I think that's something that actually does come with a little bit of experience as well, Rick, and a little bit of more maturity. I think if I was looking back in my younger years, I would probably I think I dealt less well with failure when I was younger than I did when I was sort of, my 30s, 40s. because you learn a few things actually, and I think you become more self-aware, and you do tend to see failure not in the sense of a negative term. You do tend to be able to take the learnings from it more. But some of this comes from when we're young. You know, if you think about, you know, the education system, it's very much around win or lose. You know, and that's not. Of course, there are winners and losers. You know, in sports, in life. You know, and that's fine. You have to learn that. But I think sometimes we're not necessarily equipping our young people as to how best to deal with those knockbacks. You know, it's too binary in that sense, I think. So I think the more that we can educate and help young people to approach failure in that more positive learning sense, the better, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, in the game of football, then there's win or lose, but in the game of life, it's win or learn, right?
100%. I love that. No, that's spot on. Absolutely agree with that. Yeah, for sure.
So you said you were in China.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that a little bit, only because obviously their culture is significantly different, but also their regulations and restrictions are significantly different than most places of the world. So going into that situation, not really knowing the culture, how did you address that? How did you handle that? Tell me a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, well, the really important thing, and it does make me laugh actually when people say, "Oh, I'm going to go international. We're going to grow internationally and stuff," and we're going to do it in this time frame, and you know, you have a plan and all the rest of it. And what I would say, my experience of doing business in those parts of the world is that things take a lot longer than I anticipated. Normally double and a bit. And I think you cannot underestimate the cultural differences. So for me, there was the big point around educating myself, but also educating my team, you know, and I think sometimes from a sort of a Western developed, you know, perspective, European perspective or American perspective, we can sometimes make a mistake where we think we know it all, or that we've got the best model. And the reality is that that's not necessarily the case. So, you know, you have to be able to respect the culture, and Asian culture and Chinese culture in particular, you know, is that there's a big thing around face and loss of face, you know, so you have to understand that even the way that you would, you know, receive someone's business card, you know, you would receive it with both hands. You would hand someone your business card so the text is facing them, a sign of respect. And if someone gives you their business card, you don't just put it in your back pocket. That's really disrespectful, because one, you're putting it near your bum, right? So that's not really a respectful place. In an American or British culture, you probably wouldn't think anything about that. But in China, that's like a big no-no, right? You know, so those little small things, you know, so if someone gives you their business card, you take the respect to receive it with both hands. You would look at it properly, and then, you know, the best place to put it is in if you have a suit on, for example, in your breast pocket, because it's close to your heart. You know, so that's a respect thing. You know, where you sit at the table. You know, if you think about a boardroom table in sort of, you know, US or European culture, you know, the most powerful seat, if you like, or the most senior seat is typically at the end of the boardroom table, right?
Right.
Whereas in China, no, it's in the middle. It's the middle seat. And you would be positioned directly opposite your counterpart in terms of seniority. And then the people that would spread out from there towards the other ends of the table would be the more junior people. So there's all these little things, you know, that are so important. So you have to educate yourself. I mean, when I went into China with my team, I made sure all my team had in-depth cultural training from a native Chinese person that really understood Western culture as well. So they were able to help us with making sure we didn't cause offense in the way that we carried ourselves. And yeah, just all sorts of things, you know, you would, in a Western society, you might have quite an open conversation in a meeting where you could quite openly challenge each other. Right. And that's seen as okay in our culture. Whereas in China, that's not necessarily received so well, because sometimes it's perceived that you're showing the other person up. in front of people. So that's disrespectful, and it comes back to this loss of face. So you have to spend a lot of time building the relationships. You know, you drink a lot of alcohol together sometimes, lots of dinners, you get to know the family, you know, even in big business, that's important. And then over time you build the trust, and then of course it's okay to move forward from there. But yeah, it's a fascinating culture. I really loved my time over in China and in India and Brazil as well, all very different. So I was very fortunate. Absolutely.
Yeah. And wow, that's really interesting. The business card thing, that really, I had no idea that there was a way, you know, a proper way that people would perceive handing a business card, you know, because here we don't think anything of it. And I guess nowadays, who hands out business cards anymore these days?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, that's probably a good thing, because you can't mess it up if you just scan this QR code, and then you know, you're not causing any offense. But yeah,
just make sure the QR code goes right side up, I guess.
Exactly. But no, it's fascinating. It's like anything, though, isn't it? You have to take time to get what you were saying before about relationships. You have to invest the time in any relationship, and you know, it's a bit of a dance, isn't it? You know, you're kind of sussing each other out. You know, it's like you don't go in for, you know, the kiss on a first date too soon, because you might get repelled. So you've got to pick your time in, right?
Yeah, you got to look at the signs and kind of feel it all out. Yeah.
Absolutely, it's the same, exactly the same.
So you were basically globetrotting, buying businesses. So where did you go from there? Where did that take you from there? And what additional hurdles? Because, you know, here you are on this trajectory for amazing success. So obviously with great success comes great obstacles and great curveballs, if you will. So, yeah. So what was kind of the next big hurdle that you ran into?
Yeah, so I was at TUI, and I was the managing director of the emerging markets in that role that I just described there. And then, you know, I had some choices. There was some reorganization at TUI, and I've been there sort of at this point 6-7 years, so it's kind of a good piece of time. And I was away from home traveling, sort of could be 60-70% of the time, you know, and everyone thinks it's glamorous, but you know, if you've got a weekly commute to Beijing, and it's a 12-hour flight and an 8-hour time difference, and you're going on a Monday back on a Friday, that takes its toll, right? So as much as I would loved my role, I just felt it was a natural time for me to move to do something else. So an opportunity came up for me to join a company called Saga, which is a company in the UK that targets an older demographic. And at the time, Saga had other businesses. They had insurance, they had travel businesses, they had retirement villages, different kind of sectors. But I was approached to go in and run their travel division. And this was quite a traditional business. And to be honest, the business had been in decline for quite some time. So I saw the opportunity, because the demographic is growing. People are living longer. They've got more affluence, and they want to travel. They've got freedom, choice, etc. So the performance of the business was in a polar opposite, really, of what the opportunity could be. So I thought, actually, can I make a difference? Can I turn this around? And, you know, can I add value, really? So I joined that organization as the CEO of the travel division, and I had 4 businesses in that space. So it was a great time to join, because you know, it needed some TLC, but I could see what was required. So got those businesses back into double-digit top-line growth, so revenue growth, and also doubled the profit during that time as well. So great performance, you know, and I was really delighted with that. So the couple of years I was there. And then, you know, I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm at my mid-40s at this point. And I guess I just sort of thought, you know, I love business, and but I seem to be making a lot of money for other people. And don't get me wrong. I was, you know, well rewarded for the roles that I did. But no matter how senior you are in that corporate world, you are still exchanging your time for money. You know, it's just at a different level. So I kind of assessed with my partner, Chris, we don't have kids, so we had freedom and flexibility to design our lives, if you like, in the next phase. and Chris had retired. He was 10 years older than me. And we just thought, actually, what do we want from the next phase of our life? Even though I loved what I was doing, and decided really that we wanted more freedom, choice, flexibility. To kind of do my own thing, really. So I decided to leave the corporate world. And so to where I am now, I've got a portfolio of my own businesses. So I'm corporate CEO turned entrepreneur, I guess is how you would describe me. So I've got a property investment business with my partner, Chris. So we invest in residential property, so real estate. Okay. We're growing that significantly. I have my mentoring business. So I work one-to-one with clients to really help them fulfill their true potential. So, in some of the people I work with intensely one-to-one, they maybe want to progress their career in the corporate world, or they might be entrepreneurs that have businesses that want to scale up or start something new. So I work with them to really make those dreams a reality for them and work with them, not only from a personal development, but from a proper sort of business consultancy advisory perspective. So it's a nice combination. So I always say you're not buying my time, you're buying 30 years in business, right? That's what you're doing when you work with me. Warts and all, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then the third business I have is my advisory business. So this is almost an extension of my corporate life a little bit, Rick. So I work with my clients. Sometimes it can be large corporates that want to maybe go on a transformation journey. Maybe they need clarity on their strategy, or SMEs that want to scale up. But I also do a lot of mergers and acquisitions. So I work with a lot of private equity houses. If they want to buy a business, I will help them with that. And very often I will then take a role on the board as a chair or non-exec director. So I have a portfolio now, which is really nice. And then I've got my podcast, Brave, Bold, Brilliant, as well, which, I'm enjoying doing that. So a similar kind of genre to yourself with your podcast, Rick. It's all about high potential and how do you, get the best out of yourself and other people, and how do you deal with failures and get to the top of your game, really. So, yeah, my podcast is I'm loving doing that. And it's already in the top 2.5% globally. So I'm really pleased.
That's exciting. Yeah. That is super exciting.
Yeah. So I've got kind of 4 things going on there, Rick. So it's a bit different from my corporate life, but I'm loving it as well. Yeah. So it's good.
You got your fingers in more pies, but less travel and less people telling you which pie you should be eating first.
Yeah, absolutely right. And that comes with its own challenges, doesn't it? Because all of a sudden it is funny, because a lot of people, when they decide that they want to leave the corporate world or their job or whatever level they're at, it doesn't matter, the principle's the same, and do their own thing, be their own boss. Often you're doing that because you're craving the freedom, the flexibility, etc., which is great, but then when you get there and you realize it's just you with your laptop and your phone, and then you kind of go, well, where do I start? I've got to try and find a new structure within that flexible, so it's quite interesting. How do you marry the two? And that's something that I've been trying to, get the right combination, but it's also what I help my clients with, because they often struggle with that as well,
Yeah, it's that, all right, nobody's telling me what to do. Wait, nobody's telling me what to do. What do I do? Exactly. Yeah, where's my marketing department? Where's my IT? Yeah, where's the IT where's
man? Exactly. Where is everyone?
Where's my cubicle? Damn it.
Exactly. But it's all good fun, isn't it? It's all good fun. Yeah.
All right. Well, just to kind of wrap things up, what's one tip that you would leave our listeners with if they're just kind of, all right, I'm stuck, I want to make this change in my life? What's the first step that they should take to kind of, whether it's evaluate or, how do I break out of this rut that I'm in? That's probably the best way to frame that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in there, right? But I really believe there's a relatively simple formula. This is my logical brain again, really kicking in, right? So
that's why I asked you. I knew you'd have that for us.
Yeah. So I think that the first thing, belief. Okay, you have to start with the inner you and really believe in yourself, because you can achieve anything you want. And if you look at successful people, it doesn't matter, and success means different things to different people, so make sure it's your version of success, not someone else's version. But if you look at successful people in whichever field, very often they didn't start with anything, and they might have actually come from quite difficult circumstances. But if you have the right belief structure and your mindset is in the good shape, then you can achieve anything. So that's the first thing, belief. The second thing is purpose. Be clear on what you're trying to achieve. Really ask yourself some challenging questions. What's important to you at this stage of your life? And be honest. And actually, once you get that clarity, then it really can be like a weight lifting off your shoulders. And that can take a bit of time, but really work on that. And then the third one is about action. Take action every single day towards that purpose. Keep reminding yourself how good you are and you can achieve anything. And that's when the results happen. That's when the magic happens. So yeah, I would just sort of try and simplify it in those kind of three areas, really. So belief plus purpose plus action equals results. So yeah, there's a lot in there, Rick, but hopefully that gives a framework that people can work from.
I love that. Well, Jeannette, thank you so much for being here today. I truly appreciate all the value that you brought, all the wonderful stories that you shared, and thank you so much. And just tell us, you have your own podcast, and where can they find your podcast?
Yeah, so the podcast is Brave, Bold, Brilliant. So you can find it everywhere. Stitcher, iTunes, Google, you name it. It's all going on. So yeah, no, honestly, I'd really enjoyed the conversation. Rick, good luck with everything with the podcast. It's brilliant. I love what you're doing with it. And look forward to seeing more interesting guests that you have on. Fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.